Wait.
There we go.
Oh my goodness gracious, you guys. Okay, can you see
Okay.
the presentation again?
Yes. Yep.
All
We
right,
got
you know
it
what?
all. We're
Let's do
good.
this. All right. So first of all, you can find a recording of this session and you can find basically everything that we talk about today on our website, ohioplanning.org/AICP. So, first of all, what we're going to talk about is what they call, APA calls one path to AICP. So this is the route that you now take for getting your AICP certification. And there are 3 parts to it. 1 is to register, 2 is to take the test, and 3 is to apply. And we're going to talk about each of these 3 sections. You can do these 3 different sections in 2 different cycles throughout the year. There's a spring cycle and there's a fall cycle. So right now, you might be getting ready to register and then sit for the exam in May, which would be great. Or you're going to be getting ready in June to apply, or you're just starting to look at this process and want to know what it's about, and you might be looking at the fall cycle, or even further on. But this is kind of the route that APA has established. It's going to cost about $255 to register. You test and it doesn't cost you anything. And then when you apply the last step, it's another $255. So that is kind of what you are going to be responsible for monetarily. Next, step number 1 is to register. And this is the easiest step of all. So you go on APA's website, everything is done online. And you literally put in your contact information and you essentially say, I am planning to sit for the exam next month. I have all of the qualifications that I need, and I'm ready to go. So you put all that information in, you get $155, use the button that says, yes, I'm going to abide by the AICP Code of Ethics, which we'll talk about. You understand all the requirements. You've read the certification guide, which that is like, first and foremost, the very most important thing that you can do to set yourself up for success is to read the AICP certification guide, because it lays everything out from your first moment to your last moment. And it has all the links and everything, contact information that you need to get yourself through the AICP process. And again, that's on our website. That's on the APA's website. It's planning.org/AICP. So you're also going to be doing a couple things. You're going to be taking a AICP certification. You're going to read that certification guide. You're going to take an eligibility pre-check, which I'll explain. And then also, this is the point where if you already previously registered and you're like, you know what, I wasn't able to take the exam, this is the part where, you know, you're able to transfer your registration to the next cycle. And I know this is all a lot of information, and I mentioned a lot of words and a lot of checklists, but to be honest, it's better now than it was when we all took it, because it was way less clear how the process worked. So step 2, you can ignore my comments in there with the confirming stuff. So step 2 is you literally take the exam, which we'll talk more about that in a moment. And you will do that either at a Prometrics testing center, which are everywhere from coast to coast, or you can do it virtually from your home. And we'll talk about those 2 options and the pros and cons of those as well. Now you can change your appointment, date, time, testing method within the same testing window. There is, of course, a fee. I think it's $35. So you can do that if something comes up and you just, you know, you register to sit for the exam with Prometrics, and then all of a sudden you can't do it that day. So you can make that shift within the testing cycle. If you're not able to take the exam during the window that you registered for, you can transfer it once for $100. So that means instead of taking the exam in May, you would take it in the next cycle in November. So you do have one chance to transfer it forward before you have to kind of start all over again with step 1. So in step 3, this is the part I think that causes a lot of anxiety for folks. It's all online, like I mentioned, everything's online. It's like a series of mini essay questions to determine that you have the right qualifications and the right mind frame and the right experience that you qualify for AICP outside of the exam. So after you pass the exam is when you move on to step 3 and you apply. There's something called, here's the first of my many calculators. There's an interactive experience calculator to determine how many years of professional experience you need and whether you meet the minimum requirements of education and professional experience to do all of this. So you'll look here on our table. If you received a master's degree from an accredited planning school, you need 2 years of professional planning experience, full-time experience. If you have a bachelor's degree from a planning accredited program, 3 years of professional experience, and then on its way down. So this calculator that APA has online can help you determine that. If looking at this table, you still have some questions about whether or not you qualify. So when you're doing this third step and you're applying, the first thing that you do is provide your education history, because that's part of it, right? You have to have your education component and you have to have your professional development component. So you have to upload some type of transcript or diploma copy that, you graduated with whatever degree from whatever school. So that's step number 1 in this. And then you have to fill out your employment history, which is the second part, right? So again, you need your education and then you need your professional experience. Your employment history, you can see some of the things that you're going to need to input. Again, it's all online. When I did it, I think probably Eric and maybe Catherine too, we actually had to provide a letter from our employer saying, yeah, he or she really was employed with me, which, especially if you had previous employers that, you no longer contact with, that can be difficult. So you don't have to do it. So yay. Here's another one of my online calculators. It's called the Planning Experience Worksheet. And what this does is it determines whether your experience qualifies as professional planning experience. This is where a lot of people get caught up. And I always suggest that you reach out directly to APA because they prefer that you contact them and say, this is my professional experience. Does this qualify? So you can use the worksheet, but if you still have questions, please just reach out to APA. They'd rather you reach out to them than not. So things that generally do not qualify as professional planning experience includes work at a pre-professional level. So internships, co-ops, if they count in any way towards course completion, like if you got a grade or it's some kind of requirement or like capstone class, it doesn't count as professional experience. Any elected or appointed positions, like on planning commission boards, or if you're a mayor, whatever, that doesn't count. Also related fields. So if you're coming from like the landscape architecture world, or you're a civil engineer, or you have your JD, or you're a realtor, none of that counts towards professional experience. Again, you can use this worksheet to help you with that, and also contact APA. Now, in my case, I had part of my I have a master's degree from a planning accredited board. So I needed 2 years of professional planning experience. Part of my experience was part-time that added to the 2 years of professional experience. So it was like 2 part-time professional planning gigs that added up to 2 years of professional experience. And that's totally normal. That's totally fine. Nothing counts against you if you were a part-time planner for a while. Just know that whatever employment history you put in, only put in enough to get you to your required amount of professional experience. For example, let's say you have 8 years of professional planning experience, but per the chart, you're only required to have 2 years. Put in your last 2 years of experience, and that's it. That's all you need. And the reason why is because when you get to the essays, you need to use your experience that you inputted in your professional planning experience. You need to use that to answer your essay questions. So if you're talking about like 8 years of experience from like 3 different jobs, that's a lot to manage in these essay questions. So less is more, just to keep things easy for you. So that's that. And also, like, interrupt, you should all be able to turn your mics on. So if you have questions at this point, or you can just wait till the end when we have our Q&A.
Christine,
Yeah.
we do have a question in the chat.
Oh, good, because I
And
can't see
and
it.
it was scenario, someone registered and passed the exam, but
Yeah.
failed to be approved in the apply phase.
Yeah.
Is this possible? And the answer I think is yes, but why don't you go into that?
Yeah, I will. So, it is very possible that if you pass the exam and then you hit these essay questions that you don't pass. For 2 years, I was on the APA National Board, that considered the folks that didn't pass the 3rd section, this apply section with all the essays. You have the option to appeal the decision. And then I was on the board that took those appeals and decided whether or not they should be reconsidered for AICP. So it is possible. In the next cycle, you can resubmit step 3, your essays again. Or like I said, in that same cycle, you can appeal the decision and write a letter, and there's directions for that. If you are if you don't pass this 3rd step with the essay questions, you are sent an email describing what they thought lacked and why you didn't pass it, which is good, because then you're going to be able, if you choose not to appeal it and you just wait till the next cycle to do it again, you have more information for yourself to help you through and hopefully pass through that step again. Cool. Let's see.
We did have another question about,
Sure.
can you take the exam 1 year and do the application the next year while you're finishing up your experience requirements?
Sure.
And
It's not, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say yes, but you
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, you can, absolutely, sure. It's not recommended. Like, don't start this process until you're ready to go all the way through it. Drawing it out, we have found, folks trail off. So, if you feel like you'll do better if you hurry up and take the exam right now and then finish getting all of your professional experience, afterwards, to then be able to do that 3rd step, fine. But generally speaking, we always suggest that start it when you're ready to roll and go through the whole thing. But you can do that. You can split it.
Yeah, you can. The other thing I will add is that, and we'll talk about questions later, but some of the questions on the exam are experience-based. So it is helpful to have work experience before you take the test.
Agreed. 100% agreed. So those essay questions that we've been talking about for a few minutes, here they are. You can see them ahead of time. You can go on right now and look at them. There's sort of like a mock, I think it's a PDF actually, a mock of what exactly the whole, when you go in online to do this, exactly what it will look like and the questions you're going to be asked. You can see like a mock version of it. So again, the 3rd part with the essay is your planning experience assessment. So it literally demonstrates your experience and that it meets the AICP definition of professional planning experience. And there are 3 criteria, and each criteria includes a series of checklists verifying various items, showing your experience, along with then short essay questions, again, under each criterion. So the first criterion is demonstrate a professional level of responsibility and resourcefulness while applying a planning process appropriate to the project or situation. The second, evaluate multiple impacts to a community when implementing professional planning tasks. And three, influence public decision-making in the public interest. So again, you'll answer short essays. You'll also, there's like a checklist of things that you'll like, yes, I have experience with this, 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 and this. And again, it's all online. You can see the mock version of it. So tips from me, and I'm almost done yabbing and then Eric take over. So tips from me, just from the appeals that we see, the things that we find that are most important. First of all, when you are answering these essay questions, speak in the first person. You are trying to advocate for yourself and what you have as professional planning experience. I don't want any of you writing anything about the team or your team or the team that you were part of or the department, nothing. Everything needs to be what you specifically did, not what you in conjunction with the team did. Try not to go for bulleted lists or incomplete sentences. They don't like that. Reviewers are required to base their decisions on your responses. So don't assume your application is going to be approved just because you happen to have a lot of planning experience. You need to demonstrate that your experience meets the criteria. And also your contact information, your communities, that is all redacted when the reviewers are looking at this. So they don't know who you are. They don't know what community you're from. So don't think they know. However, at the same time, avoid filler information. You don't need to give a ton of context about your community unless it's important to proving the point of what experience you have. We are on to you when it comes to filler information. So just leave it out because it's not necessary. Most importantly, and I need everyone to repeat this, only include completed project examples in your responses, and only, again, from your verified experience. So from the experience that you inputted in the first part of this section, you can only draw from that experience. Now, when I say only include completed project examples, I would say at least a third of the people that appealed the decision that, they didn't pass based on the essays, about a third of those people, it was because they were using examples of projects or things that weren't actually completed. So for example, let's just say it was, how did you influence the public through a decision, whatever. And I'm thinking of one example from someone who appealed. They created this whole presentation to city council on, why they needed to amend this certain portion of the zoning code because it would benefit the community in great ways, da, 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 da. So he wrote all about this, but council hadn't voted on it at the time that he submitted his application. So in essence, we didn't know if he influenced public decision-making because we didn't know if council passed his recommendations or not. So because of that, we couldn't use it as, a valid answer. So again, only completed projects. Also, we always suggest this, run your essay questions by your friends, by your colleagues, by your superiors, whoever, run them by me. I'll look at them. And also, again, because you can see everything before you actually go into the portal to submit it, I always say, write your essay questions in a Word document, just to make sure that your punctuation and spelling is correct, but also just so that you have record of it in the event that you do need to redo it again during the next cycle. It's always best to have it just in a separate document, and that pretty much goes for everything. Any questions? Do you see any questions in the chat box that I need to answer on this?
There was one more question about college accreditation. So
Okay.
this person was not in an accredited program.
Okay.
And was asking about years of experience. And
sure.
looking at the sheet here, any
Yeah.
undergraduate, graduate or
Oops.
undergraduate degree from a non-PAB accredited program, you need to have 4 years of experience.
Right.
If you have questions, there is a worksheet about, there's a million worksheets on the APA website. There is a planning curriculum worksheet to help you think through on your own whether your program counts or not. If you have questions, you can reach out to APA as well. They have like a AICP customer service email. It's aicp@planning.org if you want to reach out to somebody. But if you were a part of a non-accredited program, it is 4 years of experience.
And also, if you're like, I don't know if I go to an accredited program or not, this interactive experience calculator, you'll type in or look from a list of schools, and the calculator will tell you whether your school is an accredited. And PAB is Planning Accreditation Board. It's a national board that literally goes through accreditation for schools to determine, whether or not they meet the standards for their planning programs. So,
Hey, Chris, there are a couple of other questions in the chat. One of which is, how common or successful is the no college degree path? And I'll start by maybe giving a little background on that, just sort of as I know it, as someone who's been in the field for a really long time. I have worked with people through the years who maybe started working for the city of Cincinnati or for another community as like a drafts person, or, back in the days before computers, when we used to have to hand color in the maps, we had people who, started in that kind of a role, who maybe had an associate's degree at best, or maybe had no college degree. But then, had a long career, and over the years, learned about planning and worked their way up and started getting more and more, responsibility and taking on bigger projects, and, became a planner just by doing the work for a number of years. So my guess is that no degree option is there for that sort of a person, but I'll let Christine or Eric answer that as well from like the official perspective.
I totally agree with you, Catherine. That is why it's there. And there are people that do that. And it's fine. It's normal, and go you. I don't have stats from like the last 2 years of AICP exams that go in that much detail. But honestly, now I kind of want to know. So I'm going to reach out to someone and see if I can't get more detailed stats on who's taking the exam. But no, I completely agree. That's what it's there for.
One thing that I would add is that there is a lot of like study of reading materials that you would normally review or read in some sort of, college environment. So I could see there being a challenge, or not necessarily challenge, but you might have to do a little bit more studying as it relates to some of the things that you would normally learn in some sort of academic program.
Christine, Stephen Miner is raising his hand and has chatted that he has a question as well.
Okay.
Stephen, if
you
you
should
want
be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. So I guess for me, I guess I don't know if there are others, but I'm a planner at the federal level. So I'm with Federal Highway, and we do a lot of the planning, and we work in all the different states. So is there something different that we would need? Because at our level, I mean, we are working with the NPOs and the counties and all the stuff that's happening, but sometimes directly we're, even though we're attending all the meetings and everything else, we're not allowed to like vote or influence any of those things from the federal level. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like if I want to take the exam, how do we do that? So like, I've been with this job for 5 years. I have a master's in planning, and then the agency actually does 2 years of training before you go to an office and start doing community planning.
It's a good question. What is your title? What's your title?
Community planner.
Okay. And what you're saying is you don't actually influence any planning, you just provide like technical assistance, is that it?
No, well, we basically, all the federal regulations and all those things, we work with all the MPOs for everything that they're doing, whether it be bike ped work,
Okay,
whether it's
sure.
environment work, whether it's electrification, whether it's community issues, public outreach. We pretty much certify everything that's happening, the budgets, all of those
Okay.
things. We work with the states one-on-one, we work with the locals one-on-one. But
Yeah.
in terms of like when it comes down to like what would happen at an MPO level or a city or county level, we
You're hands off. Yeah. I
right.
know we've had here in Ohio, federal level planners sit for the exam and pass and, do the essay questions and pass. My suggestion to you would be, again, to reach out to APA National and, make sure, hey, before I start all this, and this goes for anyone who has any question whatsoever about whether their experience qualifies or whether they're going to like meet the definitions for professional planning experience. Just reach out to them so that you don't start this process and then all of a sudden be told, well, wait a minute, this is going to be hard for me to answer these questions. They'll be able to give you more guidance. And I know that's not like a solid answer for you, but I would most definitely just reach out to them and they'll have a conversation with you about it.
Okay, great. And yeah, I know that we have people who have it, but I don't
Yeah.
know if they had it beforehand before they came to the government. And I know
Okay,
a lot
sure.
of the things that we do in terms of when we're training the locals on different things or new things that are coming up that they're able to do with funds or projects or whatever it might be, public outreach. We do have like, we get credits if you have certain certifications. So like, for example, if DC puts on a training and I had an AICP, like those credits can count. They always
Sure.
put that out there, but I don't know, like, do people have it before they come or what?
Right,
So,
right. Sure. Reach out.
all right,
Yeah.
gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Christine.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions in the chat.
Sure. Let's do it.
First of all, Kyle, glad to hear that your personal experience is helped by the story I told about people moving up through the system. And then we also have a question: is it okay if there are breaks in your experience? Is one question.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if you pass the exam but fail to get approved for your educational and experience, do you have to retake the exam?
No.
Or can you just reapply the next phase for that phase
Yes.
cycle?
Yes.
Okay.
Do not worry. Good
Once
Lord.
you pass the
Yes.
exam, you pass the exam, right?
Once you pass. That's it. It's done.
Do not worry.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I can't even
Phew.
imagine.
Can you make that clear?
I would probably be done if I passed the exam and
and
couldn't
then be like,
give
sorry guys, I'm done. We're done here. Yeah. No,
Yes.
do not worry. Yeah. There are like fallbacks, safety
Yes.
points where you
Yes.
can just
Definite relief.
start over from that point.
All right, cool. So let's move on to the exam for a little bit. So I'm going to talk about the exam and then we're going to talk about taking the exam. So first thing is the exam. At any given time when you're registered to take it, there are 3 versions. There's a pool of 800 total questions between these 3 versions. And when you push that start button, they're like randomly assigned to your computer. That test has the test that you take is 170 questions. Of those questions, 20% of them are being screened for future inclusion in future exams, and they do not count towards your score. 150 of those questions that you respond to are scored and part of your results. You don't know which 20 are the screeners versus the actual scored questions, so you just take them all. The exam is, you can do it in person or remote, like Christine said, and it's through a private company called Prometric. The exam is 4 hours long total. You have 15 minutes at the start of the exam that provides instruction on how you're going to take it. You take it on a computer. You after you have the 15-minute instructional period, you have 3.5 hours to take the actual exam. Once you start taking the exam, you cannot pause. You can you just have 3.5 hours start to finish. If you are in person taking the exam or at your home, you can take breaks, you can use the restroom, but that time does not stop. So just keep that in mind. And then once you make it through all 150 questions, you click the finish button and you have 15 minutes to complete a survey. The one thing I will say about taking the exam is you do have to complete the survey before you see your results. So you just fly through that survey at the end. Let's see, the exam itself, like I mentioned previously, 40% of the questions are knowledge-based, 60% are more skill-based. So that's where some of that work experience comes in to help you take the exam. And all the questions are multiple choice. We'll show you a few examples in a little bit, but let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for general overview. Anything I missed, Christine? All right, so the exam is pass-fail only. So you do get a score. 55% is a passing score, but your score can range anywhere from 25 to 75. Generally, most people get a score right around 55, but it is just pass or fail. So you do get an official score right after you take the exam, and it does tell you whether you pass or failed. If you do not pass, you do find out, you do get, based on the different categories of the exam, you do find out how many questions you answered correctly versus not in each category to help you study for future exams. Let's see. Outside of that, so taking the exam through Prometric. So if you do it in person, you go to a testing facility. They are all over the United States, so you should be able to find one that is in a convenient location for you. When you take the exam, if you do it in person, you will be in a room with people taking other exams on the computer. It might be someone's GED, it might be someone taking the bar exam. You'll be just in one room with a bunch of people taking different exams. So everybody's kind of in the same boat as you are in that room. They're just taking a different test. When you register for the exam, Prometric will give you instructions on how, when you should arrive at the testing center and all that good stuff. Make sure you thoroughly review that and have a good plan to arrive at the testing center. You do pick a date and a time, so you will have a window when you have to arrive and take the exam. So make sure you have a good plan on directions and where you need to go, and allow yourself time to navigate within the building and find the room where you need to take your test. But it should be pretty straightforward. When you show up at the testing facility, they will check you in. They will give you a locker. You put all of your belongings in the locker, and you may be wanded down or patted down. The testing facility wants to make sure you're not going to cheat or bring anything that is not allowed into the testing room itself. So make sure you put everything in your locker. Make sure you dress warm enough. Those rooms sometimes can be cold, but you're not allowed to have extra layers. So you will have to leave everything in your locker. They do give you a piece of paper, a pencil, and I believe you have a calculator when you take the exam. And I think that's it.
A couple of quick things.
Yeah.
One, make sure you know where your testing center is before the day of. Like if you're not entirely sure exactly where it is, maybe do a drive-by like the day or two before, just because it's just like one less stressor for you. You will get noise canceling headphones that you can use. There's a ton of like white noise in the room as well. You can also bring your own like the squishy things that you put in your ears. It just has to be in an enclosed package that hasn't been opened yet. When you get the paper and the pencil and calculator, you have to surrender all of it after. You can't take any of that back with you. I never calm down. I never use the calculator in mine. So I see that question, they're like, oh no. So just chill. It's like, as long as you know how many, I don't know, feet in a mile or something, and you can do floor area ratio, you'll be fine. The other thing is there is like a simulator on APA's website, so you can see exactly what your screen is going to look like. It goes over like at the beginning, Eric mentioned you have 15 minutes to like kind of go over like the intro, like how the test, how you can forward, go backward. You can see that very same thing on a simulator off of APA's website, and you can see like how all the questions will look, how you can answer them, how you can go back and forth. So it's not like you go into the testing center and you're seeing these types of screens and where everything is located for the first time. A couple things. One, you can go back and forth. It's not like if you answer the question, that's it, you can't go back. There's also a process where you can flag questions. So if you want to come back to them and think about them more, you can. You can change your answers too. You don't have to answer the question, but a wrong answer is better than no answer at all, I guess, is what I would say. You still have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right, even if you have no answer. So it won't count against you more if you answer it and get it wrong than if you didn't answer it at all. So answer the questions. What else? Eric and I have both said this before. We're going through, it's 170 questions. It's there are multiple ways. There's some that are like, your choices are 1, 3, and 4, all of the above, or it's just like a solid answer, like is it A, B, C, or D? There's also some scenario questions where it's like a couple paragraphs or more, and then there's a series of questions after it. You just got to go into it knowing how you want to take the exam, or how well you are taking exams. Like I had crazy anxiety when it came to testing, like since I was like in first grade. So I like had a plan in place for myself, and I went through the entire exam. I answered all the questions that I was fairly certain on, and I flagged questions that I either didn't know the answer to, or I was not sure. I also flagged all the scenario questions, because there's nothing worse than having to reread the scenario 6 times because you're not actually focused on it, and you're thinking like, man, I still have 50 questions to go and I don't know what I'm in for these last 50 questions. Just hold off, take a deep breath, flag it, pass it up, go do the rest of the exam, and then come back to it. I personally took less than 2 hours for the exam. I think Eric, you probably I think you said you took up the whole time.
I took the whole time, yeah.
I went through the exam a second time because I felt like I couldn't get up at an hour and a half, and if I didn't pass, I'd be like mad at myself for not going back a second time. I did pass the first time, and tell you I overstudied, and my score reflected that I did not need to study as much as I did. However, I studied like excessively. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about like your study patterns and like how you want to approach it. Lastly, 2 years ago, I audited the exam. If as like the chapter director, I'm allowed to audit the exam. I took it originally in 2015, but they had a whole new set of questions. And now there was a virtual option. So I was like, well, I'll audit the exam because I know there's a new batch of questions, and I'll do it the virtual option just so that I can see what it's about, and I can tell people about the experience. For me personally, I didn't like doing it virtually. There were way more environmental stressors related to it. The directions for having your room set up were very extravagant. I had to take all the pictures off the walls, no books anywhere. Like basically I went into my bedroom and I brought in a little TV tray and my office chair. The door has to be shut. You can't have any people, dogs, phones, nothing. And then you actually have to take your laptop. So it has to have a camera. You have to take your camera or your laptop around the room. You have to show them all the corners of the room to make sure there's no one or no thing like hiding in there, the walls. You have to show them the desk. You have to like open your mouth and make sure that there's nothing in your mouth. My part of my issue was I had my office desk and then I had like a TV table, and I just took an empty box and put it on top of the TV table so that my laptop was up at a reasonable height, and they didn't like that and they told me I had to remove it. So then I had no choice. So for 3.5 hours, I was hunched way over, uncomfortable, but I didn't have a choice. I couldn't move it anywhere else because I had to start the exam. So I just had to deal with what they said and go forward. The other thing was you have to show your ID. And when I put my driver's license up, they needed to see it really close, but it wouldn't zoom properly. And so they tried to tell me that I needed to reschedule it after I got a new camera. And I said, no. So there were like stressors that if I was actually taking the exam for real, I would have been like way thrown off. The last thing that threw me off that I didn't know, someone watches you take the exam the whole time. And then like every 10 minutes, they type in this little chat box letting you know that they're there and they're actively looking at you. Who needs that? Like, I don't know. At the end of the day, you have to just kind of internally decide, like, can you be in a room with a bunch of other people with noise canceling headphones and white noise, or like, will you actually be better prepared and in a better frame of mind if you're in the comforts of your home, that you basically have to take everything out of the room first. So I'm just telling you my experience because I don't want you to get caught off guard and then not do well because of like environmental stressors around you. So
Yeah,
that's what I'll say about that.
everyone needs to do what they need to do to be
Right.
successful taking the exam. But for me, it sounds like it's easier to go to a testing center. So
Yeah.
we do have a couple more questions here. So, yes, there is a calculator. It is not necessarily, there are not necessarily like math questions, but there may be questions where you have to, there are math related things that we have to do in our jobs, like calculate floor area ratio, or maybe convert linear feet to miles or square feet to acres. There are some basics. There's not a lot. I do not recall having a math question on my exam at all. So you may or may
no,
not
really?
need it.
I definitely
Yeah.
had floor area ratio both times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it's less of about, doing math equations, or it's, there being math questions, but it's applying some of the knowledge that you need related to our
Right.
job. So let's see, a couple more questions. If you pass the exam and failed the apply phase, do you need to do anything to kind of maintain that exam? And the answer
no,
is
because
no.
Go ahead.
But I think you do have like a time frame when you need to complete your questions, don't you? You can't just go forever,
Yes.
right?
Right. Yeah. And then you have to transfer it. You can only transfer it once. So you, like, if you don't pass, you have one more cycle where you can do it again, answer the questions again.
Yeah. So in theory, you have a full year once you sign up to
when
do
you
the
pass the
exam.
exam, you're considered an AICP candidate and you can use that tagline, but you're not fully AICP where you're required to do continuing education until you are actually AICP. Also, before I forget, this scale of the 25 to 75, do not try to do math. Do not try to do percentages. This is, I say this every time, it's voodoo witchcraft math. Like, it's like your credit score math where you don't really know how it happens. There's all kinds of like scales and things that they have an outside company come in and do. Like, some of the exams are naturally, of the 3 different versions, some of them are harder than others. So they're weighted differently. So like an easy exam is weighted very differently than a harder exam where you're gonna, getting a wrong answer won't take off as many points as if it was an easier exam. So just don't even try to do the math. Just don't, because it's not a percentage. It's just voodoo. So,
And even some of the questions are weighted differently. Some are more
yes, that's
challenging
right.
than others as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so content. We're not going to get into the actual content in this presentation, but there are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are a variety of categories of knowledge that you need to understand. You can see how many questions are for each of these kind of topics. Keep in mind that AICP Code of Ethics is one of the top knowledge areas that you need to understand. So you do need to read and understand the Code of Ethics. There are tons of study materials online on the APA Ohio and the National Planning website. We'll talk about those in a bit. But most of the materials that you need can be found online. A lot of the books that you read in school will apply to study materials and the content of the exam. But again, keep in mind it is based on your knowledge of the topics and also experience as well.
Also,
yeah.
as you're looking at all of these practice areas, we always tell folks, you need to have like an internal sit down with yourself. And you need to decide, of all these practice areas, what are you least comfortable with? And that's where you need to start. Like, you can't study it all. You just can't. So you need to kind of go through each area. And again, online, like Eric said, it goes into more detail, what each of these sections mean and what they entail and what they cover. So you just need to look at that, and then you need to like label, 1 to 9, what is the area that I'm least knowledgeable on? Start there and then work your way backwards, so you're not like losing your mind because you're trying to study for everything.
Yep. Someone asked a question about,
Sure.
do the questions go section by section, or are they interspersed randomly?
Totally random.
They're totally random. And even if you're sitting next to someone with the same exam, they're randomized in order as well. So you could be taking the same exam as somebody else, but all the questions will be in a different order. It's all random.
Next up here, and you can use the QR code to like get a PDF of all of this section. This is something that I created just back from when I studied the first time, because I study, and so I did all the thing. The ones with the 3 stars are like, just do it. There's APA put out some exam prep videos, again, on their website. It's all free. So go through those videos. There's also some, it's called the APA Exam Prep Selected Resources. Listen, it's like 900 pages long. It is ridiculous. No one can go through it. My suggestion, like mentioned before, is to go through the sections that you're least knowledgeable on. Start there. Next up is the APA Planning and Law Division cases. And again, like I said, this is all of these are on the website, or you can just do the QR code. These planning and law division cases are awesome. It is a list of, I don't know, there's probably like 20, but it's like the top 20 cases that will most definitely, 1 or 2 or 3 of them will absolutely show up on your exam. Just no question asked. So make sure you just need to know them. You need to memorize them. However best you study, figure that out. If it's note cards or whatever, you need to know the case name, what the outcome was, when it was, where it was, and really how it impacted planning moving forward. Like, what precedents did it set? The next thing is the CPC exam prep history timeline. So again, this one, super long. However, there is a section called Important Planners and Planning Movements. That is stellar. You need to memorize that, again, with your note cards or whatever you do. So it's the important planners and the planning movements. Planning movements as in like your City Beautiful movement, your Garden City movement. And really the people, you need to know who they were. Sometimes you need to know when they were. If you have like a good like, oh, they were in the 50s or 60s, or like, you know, they were at the turn of the century at the time zoning was enacted, like kind of just know generally like what part of history they were in, so who they were and what impact they had on planning. Same thing with the planning movements, when they were and what was their impact on planning. Also, sometimes with the planning movements, having examples. So like, well, I'm not going to say that because that's an answer to a question. So like, if you're looking at the Garden City movement, okay, well, there was this place in New Jersey and it was like a Garden City plan development. And, you know, you're going to have to know which city in New Jersey it was. So really, as long as you're like, oh yeah, it was a city in New Jersey, you know, you'll be able to figure it out from there. APA policy guides, they're free. The PAS reports are free. Obviously, this is only if you're a member of APA, which obviously I think you all are because you have to be in order to sit for the exam. AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. It's on the website. Seriously, you just got to read it. I'm telling you, the ethics questions were the ones that like tripped me up the most, because what you think is ethical, like it's very like subjective. So just make sure you know these. The CPC study manual, they put it out in 2021. It's still super relevant. It just goes into a lot more detail of each of the topic areas. It's $15. You can get it on our website. In fact, I think Ohio is the only chapter that still offers it. Planning magazine, take a look, trends, the JAPA, which is the Journal of APA and Zoning Practice. Those, if you already get them, they are fee-based, but if you already get them, you know, hang out with them for a while. But again, the ones with the 3 stars, you guys, you just got to do it. Other resources, if you have these books already on your bookshelf from school, one is Local Planning, Contemporary Principles and Practice. It used to be called the Green Bible because it's literally green. It's changed shades of green in the years past, but this is just it's a good book to have and to review for those areas that you are not strong on. Don't try to read it from cover to cover. That's ridiculous. Next one, APA Planning and Urban Design Standards. Listen, I keep this book on my shelf just because, like, I utilize it, I reference it, but it's also really good. Like, my master's is from Cleveland State, and that's a very policy-oriented program. Whereas, like, if you go to UC, it's very design-oriented. So I felt like I needed some extra assistance on the urban design side of things. So I referenced it. This book, Everyday Ethics for Practicing Planners, it's like 40 pages. It really helps you get into the right mind frame for answering the ethics questions. So if you have time for it, if you feel like you're really strong on other things, go for this. Lastly, if you really feel like you want something super in-depth, Planetizen has an AIPC exam prep course. It varies in price depending on how detailed it is. When I studied for the exam and took it in 2015, APA happened to have a version of this. They since discontinued it, but it was basically like a complete copy of the Planetizen course, and it was really good. It had videos, it just went into super depth. However, when you purchase this, it is for a limited time, so you don't just get to keep it. Lastly, Justin, our chapter has revised our book. It's called The Guide to Planning in Ohio. It's broken up into 12 different chapters on 12 different major topic areas of planning. Yes, it does in some cases go into detail on specific reference to Ohio. However, it's a fabulous overview of the major topic areas. You can purchase it on the QR code here or just go to our website, ohioplanning.org/GTPO. So these are some like physical books if you have them around. Now, real quick, I need you to be aware of these. One is Planning Prep, which I know APA National actually advertises this. There are like 500 example exams here. I would use this specifically to practice taking a really long exam. Some of the exams, there gets to a point point where like they run out of questions, and some of the questions on these example exams were just out of control. And frankly, I tell this story every time we do this prep. Like 4 days before my exam, I was like taking some of these exams and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I like stopped studying for a day because I was like, there's no way I'm gonna pass it. These questions are absolutely ridiculous. So please just don't freak out. Use this website to practice taking a long 170 question exam. Lastly, the Study Stack Quizlet flashcard machine. It's all those like online flashcard websites. So people go in, they create their own sets of flashcards, and then you can make them public. So you could go on any of these and search like AICP exam, and you'll see other people's flashcard sets for like planning movements or like land use cases. You don't know if their answers are right or not because they're making these flashcards themselves. So be very careful, because I've definitely heard of people who have used some random person's stack of online study cards for the exam, and the questions were just like, the answers were way wrong. So just be careful of those. We have the planning webcast series. If you're unfamiliar with it, shame on you. It is a weekly webinar on Fridays from 1 to 2:30 p.m. that I host just about every week. You can view recordings of all of our webinars on our YouTube channel. Totally subscribe to our channel too. And here you can, again, if you're like, man, I don't know squat about transportation planning, you can like search in our YouTube channel for sessions, webinars directly related to transportation planning. Like I mentioned before, we have a website on our chapter website. We have a page with all the resources. Northern New England chapter, they have some cool stuff. If you want some like live action studying, the Florida chapter has a crazy program where they do actual like virtual study sessions where they go in depth on the topics, and it'll be like Saturday afternoons for like 4 hours, and it'll be all live Zoom. So take a look if you're interested. Also, Georgia chapter. There's another. I just followed this whole list. So again, go, Eric. This is your slide.
Yes. Also, I think,
and then Catherine needs to give her rally cry.
Yes. Real quick, I also think the Michigan chapter, there's one other chapter, I think.
You're right.
Yeah, Michigan has a bunch of resources. So Florida, Georgia, and Michigan are the three chapters, in addition to Ohio, that have a bunch of resources on their website. So a few tips to studying for the exam. So make sure you review the categories and look at your strengths versus your weaknesses to help you prioritize the different content knowledge areas that you need to know on the exam. Also, take some sample tests. There's 1 or 2 available on the APA website. There are also other ones available online. Watch out for the warnings that Christine gave you about where you get them. But taking sample tests can really give you a feel for how you should be responding to questions. There is a way that you respond to these, and there's kind of a way that the questions are formulated to kind of trip you up or make it more challenging. So take sample tests. They can help you understand the questions, but also help you understand what you still need to study. Create a study plan at the beginning before you start studying. Figure out what you need to do, what resources you need, and then come up with a work plan for prepping. So that might be, I'm going to study every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and then work, just live your regular life the rest of the days. That might, everybody's going to have their own kind of way that they feel good about preparing. Think about time of day as well. Think about where you're going to study. Some folks, do better studying at the office or at home or the library. So make sure you have a good kind of, you've set the stage to be successful in your studying. Let's see, read up on all the current trends. There's a ton of materials to read, but some of the materials that Christine mentioned that are current, there are current trends. The questions are changing and being added all the time. So stay up with current current topics in planning. And then study how you study best. You want to be comfortable, just like you want to be prepared for the exam. You want to be ready to study and spend the adequate amount of time prepping. And then lastly, have a study buddy. You know, there are people prepping for this exam all over the United States. So reaching out to APA Ohio, or finding someone that you know that would be studying, maybe a coworker or a friend from school, can be super helpful to keep each other accountable and moving forward, but also could be someone who you could bounce questions off of or talk through difficult topics that you're having trouble understanding. Let's see, any other tips, Christine?
I know, I know we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
If you want to stay after, I have 3 different questions that I would like to go through just to show you how to approach it. But first, the whole reason why we're here is to hear Catherine Kioger's
Yes.
give us, because so Eric and I freak you out, and then Catherine kind of brings you back to your center. So that's why we bring her here every time. So Catherine, would you please take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Christine. Okay, so I've been doing this session for a long time. This started as a brown bag lunch, like, I don't know, over 10 years ago, probably, through APA Cincinnati, just to try to get more people to take the AICP exam. So you all have access to the raise hand function or the reactions function. So why don't you all use the reactions to tell me how you're feeling right now? And if you are feeling a little freaked out or a little anxious about this, just raise your hand. Just do the little hand raise. You want to show me? Yeah. Okay. Feeling a little anxious. Yeah. Yep. Everyone. Yep. Yeah. So part of what this session does is it gives you great information. I mean, it really does. I wish that there had been something like this back when I took the AICP exam, over 20 years ago. It did not. I kind of felt on my own. And so having this session is really helpful to sort of answer questions and bring people together. But you do kind of tend to leave it feeling a little bit overwhelmed and maybe a little bit freaked out. So my job here is to tell you, don't freak out. I know, easier said than done. But I would say that because so there are 2 things I want to say. One is you're probably asking yourself, why would I do this? Why would I even go through this whole process, take this test, go through this thing where I have to describe all of the work I've done? Why would I even do it? Why would I even pursue AICP? Well, and I will tell you, I think it's really important. I think it's really important for you as a professional to be able to show that you have the credentials to do your work and to sort of show the world, hey, look, world, I know what I'm talking about. We as planners every day are working with other people from other fields who have their own set of credentials. We're all working with lawyers and engineers and architects and landscape architects and, many other fields who all have taken a test, who have gotten some sort of credential. They've got the letters after their name to prove that they know what they're talking about. And many of them also kind of try to act like planners, or question the things that we are saying. And so in order to sort of hold our own as a profession against, and I'm not saying this in any sort of antagonistic way, but to hold our own and to show hey, I know what I'm talking about here. Having AICP helps you do that. It helps you as a professional. It helps you move forward in your career. It also helps your employer. So, no doubt, Eric's firm, KZF, is in a place where they feel they have a little bit of power to say, hey, we have really highly skilled people on our staff who you can hire to help you do this planning work. He's a consultant. The City of Cincinnati can say, hey, we have a highly skilled planning professional who's at the head of our planning department. And we also have several members of our planning staff who have this credential as well. It is giving, it is really is giving your employers a little something extra as well. We've also learned from APA that professionals who have the AICP certification actually do make higher salary. Now, does it mean necessarily that your employer is going to immediately increase your salary upon receiving AICP? That didn't happen for me immediately, but it certainly did over time. And it allowed me to move up in my organization because I had that certification. And it allowed me then the next time I was, getting a merit increase to also, be a little bit more firm in my ability to do that because of that credential. So you will see if you are applying for jobs that oftentimes, especially if you're looking at the APA website or like the Plan Edison website, and people are listing planning jobs nationwide, you'll often see that they say AICP required, AICP preferred. And I will tell you, just as someone who, when we're hiring, we get an applicant with AICP after their name. Eric and I teach a class at the University of Cincinnati where we're talking to students who are getting ready to graduate, and we're trying to help them kind of like navigate, the job search process. And what we always talk to them about is you want to get in the yes pile or at least the maybe pile, and you want to stay out of the no pile. Having AICP after your name and you're applying for a planning job, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to get into that yes pile. So it seems like a lot, but it is definitely worth it. And the reason I'm here to tell you to not freak out is because if you take this exam and you do not pass it, or you pass the exam but do not make it through that next stage of showing your experience, it's okay. You can do it again. We can still do this as much as I encourage you to get the certification. We can still do this job without it. It's not like we're doctors or lawyers where you can't even practice without passing the boards. We can still do this job, and you can still do your job very well, even without the certification. A lot of people take multiple times to get through one or both parts of this process, and that's okay. So that's what I'm here to tell you is we've sort of hyped this up. We've talked about how important it is. We've talked about what a challenge it is, but remember, it's okay. I have had coworkers in the past who have taken the exam and passed right away or didn't pass right away. Ooh, that's a great question. Are there any stats available on how many people pass the exam and or part 3 first time versus second or third? Christine may be able to provide that information for us. But I guess that's just, before we open it up for questions, that is just my little statement of do it, it's worth it. But if you don't pass it, don't freak out. Just don't freak out.
Isn't she the best?
No.
We love her. I will look up and see if I can find, I think the national pass rate for AICP is 66%. I don't know if that's for first timers or whatever, but I'll see what I can find. Again, they haven't released anything really substantial in the last couple of years, but I'll see what I can find and email it out to all of you, which, by the way, I will also email a link to this recording and a link to the slide deck that we're using. Really quickly, if you're able to stay on, great. I just wanted to quickly go through a couple of the scenario questions. Here we go. I just want to kind of frame for you a way in which you can approach these questions. This is a very typical question. And the question is, typical public health topics not likely included in the comprehensive plan. Okay, so first of all, I have to look and be like, not likely. I have to be careful because they like to do the reverse thing a lot in exam questions. So I'm going to look at my 4 options. The options are aging, active transportation, Planned Parenthood, environmental health. Okay, so of these 4, what public health topic is not likely included in the comprehensive
Planned
plan?
Parenthood.
So looking down the list, I'm already being like, all right, Planned Parenthood, like that's an organization, and I don't think that's part of the comprehensive plan in terms of health topics. So I'm gonna go down here and be like, all right, so wherever I see the 3, that could totally possibly be it. Because again, what public health topics not likely included? So here's a 3 right here, and I know that there's a 3 in here. Well, these can definitely go because there's no 3, and I'm fairly certain that 3 is in the answer. And so because I know that Planned Parenthood is absolutely not, I look at my list and go aging, yeah, active transportation, yeah, environmental health, yeah. So all those things to me seem like good health topics that you'd include in a generic comprehensive plan. So I'm taking out all of the above. So I'm immediately left with B, Planned Parenthood. So I have just been able to like eliminate other options to kind of single down like one or 2 answers. If you can get yourself to 50%, a 50% chance, yay for you. All right, the second one. And these are I see this question. These are super simple examples so I can get my point across. Don't think that all these questions are that easy. Next question. A community with an aging population is reconsidering its land use and housing policies to promote aging in place. Such considerations may include promoting granny flats, relaxing development standards for nursing homes, improving transit services to residential neighborhoods, and providing loans and grants for accessibility improvements at home. All right, so first, again, I'm looking at this and being like, all right, housing policies to promote aging in place. Well, the first thing that stands out to me is not right is the second one. Relaxing development standards for nursing homes, like that doesn't really line up here. So since I know that that's not it, I'm going to be like, all right, I know for sure that 2 is not it. So wherever I see a 2, I'm going to cross it out because I already know that that's not the answer. So these 2 are going. So now I'm already just by knowing that one of these responses is not accurate, I'm all the way down to a 50-50 chance of getting this right. So I look down the list and I'm like promoting granny flats, improving transit services, providing loans and grants to do improvements at homes. All those things sound right to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and select C. Even if 3 wasn't part of it, I mean, you still had a 50-50 chance of getting this right. C is the answer, by the way. So again, you need to look kind of really holistically. Yes, you need to draw from your experience, from your community, but at the same time, don't get so detailed and in the weeds, like thinking about your community in terms of like very specific, like my community would do this. You need to think more holistically and sort of outside of your internal bubble, and look at sort of like a best case scenario. So this last one is an example of one of those questions where it's like a memorizing thing. So this particular question I put in here, and we're going to assume we have no idea what the answer is, that we just totally skipped over the planning movements section when we were studying. So I'm looking at this and going, all right, the Washington, D.C. Greater Mall area is an example of city beautiful, garden cities, city functional, and city efficient. So I'm like, oh man, what do I do? So first I'm looking down this list and I'm like, all right, city functional. I've never even heard of that. Like that hasn't even like crossed my brain before. So I'm going to go like that. City efficient, same thing like that. I don't really remember hearing about that in school or reading about that. So bye. Immediately you are down to a 50-50 chance of Eric, stop laughing, about getting this question right.
Bye.
Already, you're at a 50-50 chance. If you can get yourself down to a 50-50 chance, good for you. So I would just look at these 2 and be like, well, I'm just gonna pick one. And so, you know, whether you do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or whatever it is that you want to do to pick one, these are for those questions where you're just like, I have no idea. Again, get yourself down to a
City
50-50
Beautiful.
chance. The answer, my friends, by the way, is the City Beautiful movement. And there is guaranteed to be a question about like the DC Mall or Burnham or the City Beautiful movement. Like you will absolutely get a question related to this for sure. Last one, and then I'll let you guys go. Strategies to help combat climate change by planners involve the following. So we're combating climate change, greenhouse gas reduction, increasing vehicle miles traveled, adaptive reuse, and water conservation. The reason why I chose this question as an example is because you're going to get acronyms and you're going to be expected to know what they mean. And if you don't, you got to figure it out. I know there are in some cases where if you go back to another question, it might actually like define vehicle miles traveled. So that's a possibility. But if not, you're going to need to know basic acronyms to answer these questions. So strategies to help combat climate change by planners involve the following: greenhouse gas reduction, increased vehicle miles traveled, adaptive reuse, water conservation. All right, I'm sorry. I know right off the bat, even if I know very little about our pursuit to slow down climate change, increasing vehicle miles traveled is the exact opposite of things that we need to do. So right away, I'm going to X out any answers that have the 2 in them. And then all of a sudden, holy moly, I didn't even have to do anything else. And I already found my answer. So then you can always triple check yourself if you're like, well, maybe vehicle miles traveled, increasing it does help. You just look at the other ones, greenhouse gas reduction. Absolutely. Adaptive reuse, of course. Water conservation, naturally. So that kind of gives you then the, oh yeah, it is most definitely B. And there's your answer. So again, the best way, you just got to approach these questions super methodically. I actually had my little, you know, the blue book and the pencil that Eric mentioned you got. I would actually write down like this A, B, C, D, and then the 2, the 1, 2, the 1, 3, 4, the 1, 2, 3. I would actually physically write them down for each of the questions and like hand scratch them out, because obviously, you know, you don't have a pen option to do this on your screen. Just to help me understand, like, what do I know for sure isn't the answer, so that I can get myself down to that 50-50 chance of getting the answer right. I see a question. Can you please clarify how long a pass test is valid before you lose the ability to finish the apply stage complete years of experience? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm looking at
Eric or Catherine, do you know?
Yeah, I'm looking at the APA website, and it does
Okay.
say, please note that once you pass the exam, you can submit the assessment in any future window once you have obtained all of your experience.
There you go.
So anytime.
Since there's still 27 you on, and I have one more question, I'm just gonna do
Yeah.
it.
Well, hey,
Again, just to help you.
before you do it, on that
Yeah.
last question,
Yeah.
if I saw a term like GHG that I didn't know, I would
Yeah.
flag it, because like you said, some questions, other
Yeah.
questions may trigger something that you remember. So if you don't
Absolutely.
know, I would flag it, and odds are there might be something else that'll bring it back into your brain.
Exactly. I totally did that. Yeah, thank you for saying that. There's no reason why you can't use the flags. And then you can unflag things too. Again, like I said, change answers, go back and forth, whatever. Okay, last one, I promise. The planning director asks you to devise a plan to increase destination accessibility within the James neighborhood. Your planning effort primarily involves principles of sustainability, connectivity, complete streets, and comprehensive planning. Okay, so I'm looking at this again. The planning director wants you to create a plan specifically for the James neighborhood. So I'm looking down this list, and right off the bat, I'm like, okay, well, I ain't doing a comprehensive plan for a neighborhood update. That's for sure. So I know that option 4, is not going to involve making a comprehensive plan for the James neighborhood. So that's option number 4. So here goes option number 4, and then all the above, because that's an option 4. And all of a sudden, just like that, I am left with my answer. Now, sustainability is on here, but because I already knew for sure that comp planning was not one of the choices, I don't even have to think about whether sustainability is or not, because my answer, the only one that's left that doesn't include the one that I know isn't the answer, is B. So I don't even have to worry about sustainability. Even if I thought that, oh yeah, sustainability would help with destination accessibility, I don't even have to worry about it, because, you know, I was already able to eliminate all of them because I knew for sure that comprehensive planning was not part of that process. And you could have said the same thing too if you were like, oh, sustainability has nothing to do with that. Like, you could have done that as well if, you know, I just immediately went to comprehensive planning. So again, these are just some ways that you can approach those questions. If you have any other questions, email me, call. If I don't have the answer, I'll figure it out, or I'll direct you to Eric or Catherine. If you need a pep talk, call Catherine. She'll give it to you. But you know, we appreciate your time here. We hope that you're willing to do this. We're here to help you along the way. And you know, we're excited to go through this process with you. Like I said, have any questions, let me know. I'm going to email the slide deck. I'll email a link to this recording, and I will also see if I can't find some updated stats on pass fail rates for all the different components, the 3 different components to this. And I will send that all along too. So hey, everyone, have a great Thursday.
You're
Thanks for hanging
awesome.
out with us
You
over
can do
lunch.
this.
We appreciate you. And we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Eric.
I thank you. You can do it, everyone. You can do it.
Go team.
Go
All
team.
right, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.